Welcome to Dog Day Afternoon. I am Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. You can follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. And it's the weekly betting show where we cover some NFL, give some sports betting advice, a few picks along the way as well. And I always stress this at the beginning of every episode. We do not take ourselves too seriously. We're just talking about the NFL. It's not meant to be divisive. There'll be no vax talk, no politics, none of that. We're just talking NFL today. And every week I like to cover the latest odds in the NFL, give a platform to people I'm a huge fan of. And this is a guy who's given me a platform plenty of times if you've ever watched Mean Streets on Thursdays. And that's Chris Meaney, host of Mean Streets with FTNNetwork. Meaney, welcome to my show.
Yes, thank you. I'm thrilled to have the invite here, and I like the intro off the top. We're not going to hold ourselves, we'll hold ourselves accountable, but not too crazy here. I'm glad that we're not going to talk politics, dude, because I don't think I'd have anything to offer from a politics standpoint. So I'm happy to talk about NFL.
Neither do I. And if anything, I would rather that not be the case. I do not want to talk about politics. Pretty much leading up right up into that 2020 election, I was burnt out of politics talk pretty much the day after. So there'll be none of that here. So we're just going to talk NFL. And we're going to get started, Meaney. I like to start every show with a little bit of hot takes, stuff that's been on my mind lately. And this one might hit a little close to home to start off. It's a little segment I call Apparently. And apparently, Meaney, Gardner Minshew should be the Eagles starter. He's 20 for 25 passing yards. For passing 250 passing yards. I know it was against the Jets, so I'll put a little disclaimer out there. But at the same time, looked fantastic as a passing quarterback out of the pocket. 80% completions, only 11 interceptions in 25 starts. Hurts' best game this season. He had 70% completions, and in 16 starts as an Eagles starter, he has 12 INTs. Meaney, is it apparent it is to you as it is to me that Gardner Minshew needs to be the Eagles starter going forward?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I saw some good things. I did see some good things from him. You mentioned the completion percentage. I think it was like 9.4 yards per pass attempt, which is the highest mark for an Eagles quarterback so far this season. He did have a low ADOT around 6.4. I also saw some things that I wasn't like, yeah, the completion percentage was great, but he threw behind a lot of receivers that were just completely wide open that they found the way to catch the ball anyways. Like, yeah, he had a great performance. He was good. The offense was maybe a little bit more balanced. We got to see what Nick Sirianni could call in a game where, you have a quarterback who could throw the ball a little bit more with accuracy. But again, you said it, man. It's the Jets. Like, it is the New York Jets. It's one of the worst teams ever assembled in the game of football. So I don't think we can take too much stock into Gardner Minshew going into New York and winning that football game. Like I said, he did some good things. I thought he did some things where, he fled the pocket when he probably didn't need to in some moments. I thought the difference between him and Jalen Hurts was that he was able to kind of go through his reads, right? His first read, maybe not there. Take a look at his second read, maybe check down to a running back, where Jalen Hurts, first read's not there, maybe panicking a little bit, not getting the ball out as quick as Gardner Minshew did this previous weekend. And then maybe just tucking in and running it, which we've seen from Jalen Hurts all season long. So, yeah, it was nice. Good on the Eagles to flip a sixth-round pick to get a guy like Gardner Minshew, where most teams across the NFL don't have a capable backup to get in there and get them a win. But this is the same guy that lost his job to, who was it, Luton? Was it Jake Luton a couple years ago? I'm here for the Gardner Minshew story. I was happy to see him with his old man at the end of the day after the game, like giving him a couple jabs. Like, he was fired up. It's great. It's awesome. I'm sure all week in Philadelphia and next week as well, with them being on a bye, there will be talk about a quote-unquote quarterback controversy. I believe Sirianni, that Hurts is the guy. You need to see what you have in Hurts as well. Minshew's not the quarterback of the future. Gilles, you probably know this. Everybody watching probably realizes that maybe Hurts is not the quarterback of the future either. This team does have 3 first-round picks next year. I don't think they address the quarterback position. But you got to see what you have in Jalen Hurts. Down the stretch with the playoffs on the line, inside the division, you're going to play Washington twice. You're going to play the Cowboys again, another game against the Giants, where he was awful in that game against the Giants.
In Philadelphia,
he was
too.
Trash. So these next few weeks are going to be super telling for him. If they do feel like he's going to be the quarterback of the future, you got to go back to him.
Well, and I think the two things that I took away from this is that, first off, put some respect on the Jets. They beat the Bengals and the Titans this year, and I would say the Bengals and Titans are better than the Eagles. Okay. Now, that's it. But we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say the Jets are much better than that.
Fair points.
And then secondly, The one thing about Gardner that I was actually really impressed with was how much he looked to Dallas Goedert in comparison to Hurts. I'm not saying that Hurts doesn't look to Goddard, but that's the Dallas Goedert that always scares me whenever I see the Eagles coming up against the Cowboys, is that this type of physical beast that could just kind of overrun linebackers and safeties. And he actually got him super involved in that game. Now, again, mind you, it was against the Jets, so we'll always throw in that disclaimer. But those were the two things that I took away, was that if we're getting Goddard involved, then the Eagles offense just looks that much more explosive. I'm hoping that Hurts, obviously as a Cowboys fan, does not take that advantage. But that was the main thing that I took away, is that Goddard was just very impressive in that game. We're going to move on to the next one now, Meaney. Now, apparently, the Cardinals are not to be trusted because, yes, they may have the best record, but I'm not going to go as far as calling them like the Arizona Fraudnals that I've seen some people say on social. But you never know who's going to play. Like Hopkins, yes, he did play 39 snaps this past week, but you barely even noticed him on the field. He basically made 2 catches, 1 in the end zone. That's really all he had to do, and then he pretty much subbed himself out. And I mean, even Kyler looked kind of sluggish running these 2 touchdowns in that he did. Like he looked a little hobbled, like when he was running them in, even though he was still the fastest guy on the field. Is it apparent as to you as it is to me that the Cardinals are not to be trusted when it comes to like winning the Super Bowl or making it all the way to the end of the NFC?
Yeah, I kind of agree with this one a little bit more, but I will give them a bit more credit than I think you and a lot of people are. You hear people saying, oh, we're not talking about the Cardinals enough. We're not talking about the Cardinals enough. Well, it's kind of on the NFL too. I mean, this is the best team in football, and they have 0 Sunday night games, like no primetime Sunday night games for Kyler Murray and this explosive offense. Why? They've won 7 games in a row on the road. They're perfect on the road, and they've won each of those games by 10-plus points. They're the third team in NFL history to win 7 games on the road and win them all by at least 10 points. This defense is good. This defense is pretty good. Football Outsiders has them as number 3 in DVOA defense. Against the run, not so much, 15, but against the pass, number 3. And what I saw from Arizona over the 3 games without Kyler and Hopkins was, a bit of a hiccup before against the Packers, but a win against San Fran, who's absolutely rolling now in San Fran. The loss against Carolina is certainly a little puzzling, but the win against Seattle in Seattle too, without Hopkins, without Kyler, and there was Chandler Jones missed a game there. No Chase Edmonds. So they're getting it done, man. On defense, I think Kingsbury's probably the coach of the year, although Bill Belichick probably has something to say about that after last night's performance.
I was going to say Belly is like right now, I think, the guy, but I think you're on to something here. I think just my issue right now, Meaney, with this team is that, and I mean, I think this is pretty much every team in the NFL, they just look vulnerable to me. Like there's a team that, like, just for me, if I was to go right now, drop a unit on 8-1 for them to win the Super Bowl, I would not feel confident in that at all, even if they had the 1 seed in the NFC, because I don't feel like Arizona is this, this daunting place to play comparatively to Packer Stadium or,
sure,
or even just in Tampa Bay. So yes, I agree with you. The defense is playing at an elite level. I think that's really the key thing here. But again, I just feel like even just the game against the Packers, for example, I watched them kind of get picked apart. So that was kind of my issue with them, is that I find it difficult to feel good about them if I was to bet on them. So for me, I'm just not going to trust them. If other people want to trust them, I hope you got them at the beginning of the season when you got them, because right now you're buying super low.
You are.
Yeah.
There is one more thing I want to say about them. Is just, I do agree. If they were to play, and they're going to play the Rams this week, and they did spank the Rams. If they were to play the Rams, I'd be a little hesitant to pick them. If they were to play the Packers, I'd be a little hesitant to pick them, seeing that Green Bay went in there to play. But it is key for them to have that number 1 seed, to not have to go to Lambeau. I thought last week, even though it was the Bears, it was a true test for them because they played in the element of nasty weather. It was rainy, it was windy. They don't practice. They don't have those kind of practices in Arizona. They're in a dome. They don't have those type of games. So for the path to go through Arizona, you're right. You're spot on, and I agree with you. It's not like this is a negative thing for opposing teams, but for them, it would be a positive to play, in a dome under like perfect elements.
Yeah. So that's it. I don't trust them to win the Super Bowl. I hope you got them at half decent odds, maybe at the beginning of the season when they were closer to like 20-1. Now I would not play them at this stage. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Cardinals later in the show, but now let's move on to the next one. Now, apparently, Meaney, Everybody sucks in the AFC North. I can't pick who's the best team out of that division. Like first to last is separated by 2 games. Every team except the Bengals seems to look competent when they play each other, but even the Bengals got spanked by the Browns a few weeks ago. Looking at the odds right now, like Ravens are minus 150, Bengals plus 250, Browns plus 550, Steelers 14-1. Which again, even the last odds almost seem hilarious, just given where they're at in the standings.
Right.
Meaney, is it apparent it is to you as it is to me that basically every team in the AFC North is just a write-off for you?
Yeah, you're spot on here. I really don't know what else to add. I mean, the Steelers got away with the victory against the Ravens last week, but the Ravens are just decimated with injuries. It's been such a tough go for them, even before the season started, losing J.K. Dobbins and then Gus Edwards, and then third string Justice Hill. They've been getting some decent performances from Devontae Freeman. They got some, from Latavius Murray a few weeks ago, but now Marlon Humphrey's done for the season. Mm-hmm. You heard Harbaugh say after the game, why did you guys not kick the extra point and go to overtime? Dude, we didn't have any defensive backs to roll out there in overtime. We just were decimated, so we thought, why not put the ball in a former MVP's hands, Lamar Jackson, and see if he can get it done and get the win. So I don't feel great about them. I have never been on the Steelers this year. I think that they're absolutely trash because of Big Ben and the offensive line. And then what you said about the Bengals, man, I think that they're the team now in the NFC. You can get them also plus 275 to win the division, and I think that's pretty good odds considering what we just talked about with Baltimore and the injuries. But for the Bengals, every time I want to jump on with Cincinnati, it's okay, you beat Baltimore, and Baltimore, you smacked them, and then they went to the Jets, like you alluded to earlier, and they lost. And it's okay, they went back home, and then I think they had a nice bounce back win. I think they smashed the Steelers, but they also had that game where they lost to Cleveland. And then last week, a lot of just mistakes. It's not just this division. It's probably a lot of teams, or this division, it's a lot of teams in the AFC conference that have just been inconsistent this year. Seeing it from Zach Taylor, head coaches, I believe in year 3, still some inconsistencies with the play calling. Joe Burrow, still mistakes, throws that have led to picks. And Jamar Chase, as great as he was the first few weeks of the season, the drops have kind of creeped back up into his game, and he's had some glaring mistakes as well. So, and Cleveland's probably the team that I liked the most, Jill, heading into the season, but they've had so many injuries, and Baker's nowhere near 100%. So, this division is not great, man. And a few years ago, apart from the Bengals, it was one of the better ones in sports, really.
Well, and the funny thing about this is that every show, I always ask people when we do the rapid fire Q&A, we're not going to do that today, but it was just one of those questions that I always would throw out there, just like a layup question of who you think's winning the AFC North. And I would say the first 8 to 9 weeks of this show, always the Browns. And finally, the tide turned, and everybody's now against the Browns. And I can't really blame them. It's hard to actually feel good about any of these teams. So conclusion, Jalen Hurts needs to start for the Eagles. The Cardinals, I kind of trust them. Not really, though. You kind of trust them. Probably trust them more than me. And we both agree everybody sucks in the AFC North. All right. We're going to move on to some futures now. And we're going to talk about that Arizona Cardinals team because the Arizona Cardinals, I think, offer some value for some different spots here. So let's take a look at them right now. So the Cardinals, to win the Super Bowl right now, this is the odds from BetMGM. To win the Super Bowl, plus 750. Kyler Murray MVP's odds have actually shifted again after that most recent game down to 8-1. To get the 1 seed, as we were discussing, is at plus 125. And to win the AFC, just to go to the Super Bowl, is at plus 375. Meaning of those 4, if you had to put a unit of your hard-earned FTN dollars on this, which one would you pick?
I would probably pick, I have a 23-1 future on Kyler Murray to win the MVP.
I know.
And I don't think he's going to win it. Even at 8-1, I just can't see it. He's got 19 passing touchdowns. He missed 3 games. He's got rushing touchdowns, 5 of them, but he had double digits the year before. I just think it's Tom Brady's award to lose at this point. I would say maybe to win the Super Bowl. As much as I look at those odds and I don't feel like I like a lot of them, I'm looking at Arizona's schedule, to win the AFC. I mean, they got the Rams this week. They got a tough game against Dallas and the Colts. And I look at Tampa's schedule. I think that they could, or I look at, Tampa and Green Bay. And I think that these 2 teams have much easier schedules where they could get that top seed. Tampa's got Buffalo this week, but after that, the Saints, the Panthers, the Jets, Those are easy games. Green Bay's got Chicago, Baltimore depleted, Cleveland depleted, Minnesota. I mean, they're a team that gets in their own way, and then Detroit. So I think if I'm taking a shot on any of those odds that I saw, I'd probably just take the Super Bowl odds and think that they can get it done. But honestly, I don't like a lot of what I saw on the board there. I think that the Bucs are probably well on their way, and if teams got to go into Lambeau and beat the Packers, it's going to be a really tough spot for them.
Yeah, and I think the one thing too is that if you are going to bet on the 1 seed at plus 125, you might as well just double down and take to win the AFC as well, because then you can at least get both of those bets. And I think they correlate as well because of being able to get that bye and then only having to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. My issue with if you were to only bet the AFC is I wouldn't do that, because I agree with you. You want to take the Super Bowl odds instead, because you have to just look at who their potential matchups would be if they get all the way there. Let's just use Kansas City, Patriots, and Bills. Let's just use those 3 as an example. I'm thinking Arizona, if we're on a neutral field, is probably going to be favored over the Bills. Probably going to be favored over the Patriots, not by much, but I don't think they would be favored over KC if you're just using neutral field aspect. So for me, that's why it's like, okay, basically if you're going to take to win the Super Bowl, you have to almost be thinking about who they're going to play like in that game. And so, because I feel like if they're an underdog in that game, like if you think Kansas City is going to win the AFC, you could potentially just kind of wait until the Super Bowl, save your money,
right,
and then just hammer the Cardinals hard for the Super Bowl game. But that's kind of just more strategy, that it might be too many moving parts to be able to feel like you get actual value for it. So I'm with you that I think the Super Bowl is probably the best odds, but at plus 750, as I was saying before, I feel like you kind of already lost the value. I'm kind of hoping what happens is that they lose to the Rams this week, and then maybe that drops down to maybe plus 1,000 again, and then maybe you can jump back in with a little bit better value. But
that's a good call, because that's probably what would happen, right? I mean, if they do lose to the Rams this week, then you get better odds, right? The Rams would probably creep back up, because at one point they were right in the thick of things of being Super Bowl favorites, and they've kind of tailed off lately. But that's a good call. If you do like this Cardinals team and you want to take a shot on them to win the Super Bowl, maybe you wait it out a week or two, because if they do lose this week to the Rams, then we'll see maybe 10-1.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the Cardinals' remaining schedule, meaning like it's Rams, Lions, Colts, Cowboys, Seahawks. That looks like at least 3-2. Maybe 4-1 if they beat maybe 5-0. Like, I mean, they're that kind of team that I still think that they're an injury away. Like, I just think Kyler is too fragile, and I think Hopkins is a hamstring. I'm not sure if that's ever going to be corrected for the rest of the year. So again, going back to the opening segment, I just don't trust them. So a gun to my head, I would probably take to win the Super Bowl, but I just don't love the value at all. All right, we're going to move on to the next team, Meaney. It's a team that's won 5 straight games. It's the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins to win the Super Bowl all the way up to plus 25,000, and to win the AFC 125-1. To win the AFC East 25-1, but this is the one I snuck in there because I thought this would be some decent value to make the playoffs at plus 450. Meaney, are you with me in that you think of these 4 futures options for the Miami Dolphins, the playoffs one offers the best value?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to catch the Pats, but yeah, you're right. They've won 5 straight games here. The schedule is okay. I mean, they're on a bye week here, and then they got the Jets and the Saints after that. But then, the key is going to be Tennessee week 17 against the Titans. Will Derrick Henry be back? Will A.J. Brown be back there? And if they are, then I'm not going to feel great about Miami. And then they got New England week 18. Is that going to be a game where the Pats are just going to be actually resting? Is that where we are now?
And even if they are, man, it's in Miami.
It's in Miami,
man. The Patriots in Miami just is not a good bet. It's just historically doesn't matter, So
yeah, and Tom Brady's he's really struggled. I know he's not on that team, but he's really struggled over the course of his career, as well as the entire team. I watched a play the other day. Was the Kenyon Drake? Do you remember at the end of the game? It was like the walk off, a bunch of laterals, and then they had Gronk at the end, and he tripped over his own feet. But
it cost the Pats the 1 seed.
It did. Miami's playing really good football. Tua's playing great. I think 4 straight games, a 70% completion rate. Jalen Waddle looks like a player. The defense is playing pretty decent. They're getting a decent run game as well with Myles Gaskin. At the start of the season, they weren't using Gaskin. They had a bunch of Malcolm Brown sprinkled in. Ahmed, it was just a mess. But now they've given touches to Gaskin. He's been a guy that we've been betting over at FTNBets.com. His rushing attempt prop's been at 12.5. He's cleared that 4 straight games. So I don't think so, man. I don't think that they get in. It's been a nice run. I wish they'd go back to losing so the Eagles can get a higher pick, but I think that's the best bet, isn't it, for them to squeak into the
Well,
playoffs?
I do, but I think honestly the best approach is that, let's say you believe they're going to make the playoffs and you look at it at plus 450. I honestly think you could get better odds and value if you just money line the rest of their games. So the Jets, they're going to be favored, but they're not going to be favored against the Saints because it's in New Orleans. They're not going to be favored over the Titans. And the Patriots, again, we can figure that out as we get there, if whether or not they're going to sit or rest starters. But if they're not, the Patriots are clearly going to be favored in that game. They're going to be dogs, in my opinion, in 3 of those games. So if you just money lined each one and rolled over the profit, because that's what it's going to take for them to make the playoffs. They have to essentially win out to make it at this point because of all the teams that are ahead of them that they'd have to leap just to get to the 7 or 6 seed. So if you think that that's going to happen, I would just money line and roll it over, and you would get way better odds than plus 450.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to be safe and you're just like, you know what, I don't trust the rollover aspect and the strategy, plus 450 is a nice consolation as the safety odds. But again, I just think the rollover method, that might be the best way to go if you're thinking that the Dolphins do make a postseason run.
I don't know who would come out of there, man. I don't know who would be the team to come out. Like maybe the Titans. Maybe the Titans are I think the Bills. I think they figure it out. They got some. I don't know who that team would bounce. Maybe
it's tough, man. It's more right now. It's record, because in the AFC, I think 9-8 will get you there. In the NFC, I think 9-8 gets you there for sure. I'm just not sure if 9-8 gets you there in the AFC. You might have to win 10 to get in there, and if that's the case, then they go win out, and that's like that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So, so let's move on. You brought up the Titans, a team that was just came off by, not really talked about, even though they're one of the top teams in the AFC. So let's talk about the Tennessee Titans, who have plus 2,200 odds to win the Super Bowl. I threw this in there just as a joke because, again, Ryan Tannehill at 25,000 or plus 25,000 just seemed hilarious to me to win MVP. But to win the AFC, sitting at 10-1, and to get the 1 seed at plus 250. Meaney, do any of these futures for the Titans appeal to you?
I maybe take a shot on the AFC. If this team was healthy, I'd feel a lot better. There's so many questions right now surrounding them, and it really is Derrick Henry. Like, they're capable of beating any team in the AFC. They've already proved it. Not only just this year. They beat the Ravens a couple years ago. Remember when they were like double-digit dogs? They beat the Ravens
to the AFC
pretty
title
easily.
Game 2 years ago, man.
Yeah, they were up in that game against the Chiefs in the second half, and they kind of gave it away. They were a little conservative. So they played really well against really good teams in the AFC over the past couple of years. I mean, they've beaten a lot of good teams this season. We talked about some of their losses that they had. But I thought the win in Seattle early on in the season, great. The win against Buffalo, they hung on there. They smacked the Chiefs 27-3. They crushed them. They beat the Colts a couple times this season. They handled the Rams. And then they've had some pretty tough losses, right? When you lose to the Texans and you lose to the Jets, it gives you a little bit of pause to back this team and suspend some of those hard-earned bucks that you talk about. But even going into New England last week with no Henry, I know Julio hasn't given the whole lot, and no A.J. Brown, I thought that they played pretty decently. They ran the football really well, as best as you could, man, for really no weapons there. So I think, I do believe that they could get that number 1 seed. With the schedule this week, you got Jacksonville, you got Pittsburgh, San Fran, Miami, Houston. I think that those are all winnable games. The San Fran one is the toughest one. So I think they could get that 1 seed, but I think maybe if you're looking for a long shot, maybe just have them maybe to just win the AFC overall. But they really need a healthy Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown for anyone to take them seriously on offense.
Yeah, so here's the deal. I think I'm fairly certain, but I'm not sure if you're hacked into my notes or hacked into my email, because that's pretty much the same conclusion that I came to, is that I have the Titans to win the AFC at 10-1 as the best value, because they play the Jags, Steelers, and 49ers for the remaining schedule. I think they can go 3-0 in those games, but if you don't feel that way, that's okay. I just think that they're going to sweep that. And this bet is basically hinging on if you think Derrick Henry is coming back, because they played in the AFC title game 2 years ago. They've beaten Buffalo pretty much. Outside of the Patriots, any top team that they've played, they've won. So when it comes, that's who the teams that you're playing. So it's almost like one of those teams that like plays to its competition, which I hate that analogy, but that is the case
true,
right
though.
now. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
So for me, like the 1 seed, I just feel like I don't like the value at plus 250. If they do get to the 1 seed, then just take them to win the AFC, because whoever they play in the NFC, even if they've beaten the Rams, or let's say the Cardinals or the Bucs, doesn't matter. They're going to be underdogs in that game, and especially if they play the Rams, because it's going to be a home game for the Rams at SoFi Stadium. So for me, at 10-1, I think is the best value. Obviously, we're not going to take Tanny for MVP. Super Bowl is not bad at 22-1, but again, I just feel like if you were to get the AFC bet, just take some of those winnings and take them as an underdog in the Super Bowl if you think they're going to win again. So that would be my conclusion, is that I think actually the Titans to win the AFC at 10-1 is fairly decent odds and value, especially with the teams ahead of them of both KC, Buffalo, and the Patriots all having better odds than them right now. And the Titans have already beaten 2 of those 3 teams. So we're going to move on to some week 14 games, Meaney. And I sent you 4 games before the show. The odds may have moved since we have started to kind of dive into them. But 4 games specifically that I thought were probably the ones that I'm going to be watching, at least front to back, going into Sunday. And that's Rams versus Cardinals. Rams are plus 2.5 underdogs right now in Arizona. Cowboys -4 against Washington football team on the road to that team. The Bills and Buccaneers, nice matchup. Bills are +3 right now. That might change now, obviously, after last night's game. And then, of course, the 49ers and the Bengals, 2 teams that it doesn't seem like anybody can really figure out or determine kind of where they're going to go this year. So of these 4 games, Meaning, do you have any strong conviction or a side that you like so far of those 4?
I like the Bucks, man. I know Tino running the show for you produces Mean Streets as well, and All in Football, which you can catch on BetsTV with Jake Seeley, is I think he said he was on the Bills 3.5. I don't mind that hook, like I like that idea of it, but I just think that this Bucks team, this is kind of the moment last year where they hit their stride, where they just really started to get into a groove and started torching teams. I think the Bills have an issue. I really do. I think they have an issue. It's something that I've talked about a lot. They just don't have a balanced attack on offense. They need to have some sort of run game. They just have to. You can't just beat teams on Josh Allen's arm. It didn't work last year. I thought they should have lost to the Colts. They squeaked by and got that one. They had a playoff game after that where they ran the ball once in the first half. Yesterday, if they can get anything done on the ground, if they could have gotten anything done on the ground yesterday, they would have won that football game. They lived inside the red zone quite often in the fourth quarter. They just have no run game, and they're not going to try to establish it against one of the best rush defenses in the NFL over the past 3 years. This is not going to happen against the Bucs. I think the Bucs are playing better defense. They're starting to get healthier on offense. So I like Tampa Bay to continue to roll. I think the Bills can keep it close, but I have some legitimate concerns about this Buffalo team. Other than that, also your boys. I know Washington's played really good, and defense, they played really good lately as well. It's been a great story for Washington. Heineke's playing good football. They lost Chase Young, and it looked like, that's it. They're completely done. The defense is not going to be great. But they've kind of held their own over the past couple weeks. They beat a Bucs team and Tom Brady, and they held their own against them in the playoffs last year too. So I know it's for a division game. You know, these NFC East games are always tight. You know this, even when the Eagles were favored by 4.5 against the Giants, that didn't go in their favor. So I think it could be a field goal game, but I get to give the benefit of the doubt to the Cowboys. They've been one of those teams that have just been, I guess it's nothing new. You know this, right? The highs and the lows of Dallas. When you should win, they lose. When they shouldn't, they win. But I think I got to give them the benefit of the doubt, even on the road, right, to go in there and win that game. But I think they win it probably by a touchdown.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, Meaney. I honestly, as an Eagles fan, I didn't think that you would actually. I thought for sure you were going to be like, you know what, I'm taking Washington money line. Here we go, like kind of thing. For me, it's the number. I don't like -4 at all. Like I think right now, when I'm just looking at the latest odds for it, it is sitting at. Well, I had it.
It
here.
is 4.
Is it
you got
still
4 at
4?
FanDuel
Okay,
is -110. You can get 3.5 on DraftKings. Maybe that goes there. Maybe you wait another day. Potentially, it could go to 3 on DK if people keep.
I think there's going to be more people jumping in on a home dog that's won 3 games in a row, because of the fact of. Even though they've only scored 35 total points over the last 2 games, or probably 34, it was 17-15 back-to-back games. I still I get a little concerned, just like with like matchup issues. Like Terry McLaurin, I feel like could pretty much do whatever probably he wants against Trayvon Diggs. I was very worried if Logan Thomas was going to be back, but it doesn't look like he's going to be playing because he's going to probably be out for the remainder of the year. So I think that's my issue. It's the number. If we were sitting at -3, I'd be like, okay, let's go. And I think odds makers know that too. Actually, I think my favorite of them, I really like Rams money line this week against the Cardinals. I'm a sucker for punishment, man. And I feel like this team is better. Obviously, remember we talked about how the Rams needed that get right game against the Jaguars, and they just torched them. I think that's what kind of is going to be able to springboard them into the next level here, especially if Darrell Henderson comes back from that rib injury. So I think Rams money line is probably my favorite of those. 49ers Bengals is too much of a toss up, and there's no way that I'm backing the Bills money line as long as they're going to keep basically handcuffing Zach Moss and Singletary, like who have just been ineffective even when they've been given the ball. I'm not into it. And I think the Bills will probably take another loss here, especially with the way the Buccaneers have looked passing the ball. So yeah, I think we're both so you're going with Cowboys -4 and Buccaneers -3. I think those are your two.
Those are my two. I agree with you on the Niners and Cincy. It's just really too tough to call. Like I can't feel too strong about it. I do think San Fran wins. I really like the way that they played football over the past few weeks, running the football really, really well. The defense has been
Jimmy
better.
The ball, man.
Yeah,
Jimmy
it is.
The ball just makes me sick. It makes me queasy.
And that's the issue. That's why I can't take them too serious into the playoffs. I'll tell you what, the Packers don't want to see the Niners, though. This isn't the same Niners team, but we've seen the Niners have their way with Green Bay, Matt LaFleur and company. They've struggled against the 49ers, and Shanahan kind of has their number, and that could be a potential matchup in the playoffs, but that game will be played at Lambeau as opposed to San Fran, the old Candlestick. Now, what, Levi Stadium? I don't know.
Levi Stadium.
But I can't bet on either of those teams. There's still some consistencies. I get the Rams thing. I understand it. Right? It's a dog. It's a really good team. Plus money. Why not take a shot on a good football team to win a game? You don't get the Rams with those type of odds all year long. Right. But oh man, we'll see. Maybe they can they'll watch the tape and see what they could take away from that loss. Man, they got absolutely smacked on both sides of that game earlier in the year, and that's maybe the Rams were just feeling themselves off that big win against the Bucs. It was kind of like the Super Bowl win for McVay. He was so amped to beat Tampa Bay and company, where they just kind of were feeling themselves too much. But I think they're going to have to, the offensive line's going to have to hold up, because what happened in that game was just a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford. And I'm kind of worried about his body. He's
just beginning.
When you see the injury reports, like in brackets, there's like 7 injuries. It's like ankle, knee, back, foot, shoulder, personal reason.
And I mean, that was going to be one of my apparently topics last week, was that it's not the Lions, it's Matthew Stafford. It's just because I'm not saying the Lions obviously 1-10-1. Really, what am I going to hang my hat on when I say that? But I don't feel like they'd be much better than 1-10-1 if they had Stafford. There may be like 2-8-1, like, you know what I mean? I'm not sure if he was the difference maker that he was touted to be coming into the year. Before we move on to rapid fire Q&A, I also just wanted to let people know that one bet that I have locked in, and I just put it in this week, is Micah Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year at 35-1 is sitting there right now. And I know obviously we could talk about Trayvon, we could talk about TJ Watt, we could talk about Myles Garrett, but you saw the numbers that they're touting right now on ESPN and just every other stats Twitter account that you can follow, of the 100 tackles and the sack numbers, and how it hasn't been done since 93 and how it hasn't been done since James Harrison, and all these different things and comparisons. If he just starts going off again for the remainder of the year, especially with Lawrence on his bookend to be able to rush the pass, Randy Gregory coming back, there's very strong potential that he could just vault right up into the top 3 of voting and pass his teammate. I just think at 35-1, especially 2 weeks ago when you probably couldn't even bet on him for this market, pretty good value. All right, now we're going to move on to some rapid fire Q&A. This is the way we always end the show, just to be able to put Meaney on the spot. I share everything with the guests before the show, just as far as the topics we're going to cover, except this segment, because I like to be able to get people a little uncomfortable here. So these ones, the questions aren't actually too they're not TMI or anything like that, Meaney, so you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But they are going to kind of put you on a spot where you got to answer quick. So first one, who you got winning the NBA championship?
The Warriors. The Warriors had 9-1 Warriors started the season, probably best value. I think maybe they may be favored, but it's got to be Golden State getting Clay back.
They're still sitting at like 7-1 now at some books too. So
grab them.
Yeah, because the Nets right now, they still have it at plus 240 for them. So all right, Chris, next question. What feels better? Your favorite team winning a Super Bowl or your favorite team winning an NBA championship?
Oh yeah, this has happened to me both. It's got to be the Super Bowl, yeah. With the Eagles, I think that was terrific. Man, it's tough, man. When the Dallas Mavericks won, I felt so good for Dirk, but I was just on another level when the Eagles won. So yeah, it was nice to see that first championship in Philly, and yeah, I think I just more of a passion for football than the NBA, even though I love basketball. So it was.
Well, fun. I just also figured too with 2006, just the way it went against Miami. I just figured that the redemption would just be like the weight off your shoulders, like
But also the same thing with the Eagles beating the Pats, right? In 2004, they lost to Brady and the Pats, and that was a gut-wrenching loss. So it was nice to have a little bit of revenge there. But yeah, certainly to get it on Miami, especially with LeBron and Wade, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. Like, shut the hell up, guys. Like, yeah, it was great to see them collapse and the Mavericks to come back in that one.
Question number 3, Meaney. True or false? Montreal Canadiens are the worst team in the NHL.
False. They're not the worst. Maybe they're the second worst. Arizona still is the worst team in the NHL ever assembled. But the Habs are close, man, especially with missing a lot of key players on injury, too. Some of their better players are now done for the next few weeks, and no sign of Carey Price in sight to save them. So, yeah, not the worst, but pretty close, man.
Well, I think that is difference maker, right? Like, if you don't have Price, you do immediately fall down to a bottom 3 team. You know what I mean? Just because that's how much of a difference maker he is. And obviously we want him to get better and take the time that he needs to be able to come back to the ice. But yeah, Carey Price is a really good goaltender, and a goaltender is the difference between being a playoff team or not. And sometimes the difference between winning a Stanley Cup or not. So, I mean, they just went to the Stanley Cup final last year, even though most of their wins last year were against bottom feeder Canadian teams, but that's neither here nor there. They still had to win those playoff series, and still, even to make the Stanley Cup final with that team, I still think that's a hell of an achievement.
I feel like they won it. I mean, they beat the Leafs down 3-1. I think that they won the cup. I mean, everyone says the Leafs the best team ever. I mean, the parade is always the parade's planned right now in Toronto again. So I think that they won. You're right, though. It's Price, it's Weber. They lost to Toffoli's hurt now. Kotkaniemi. It's not the same team that went to the finals. No excuses, but yeah, they're pretty bad, man. Thanks for bringing that up.
Hey, man. I'm just saying, like, every Canadian team is feeling the heartbreak of
it's
not
been a
winning
while.
a Stanley Cup since '93. I can't help it that my team moved to Colorado and won a Stanley Cup the first year it went there. Like, I can't help it. That's my team. I'm just gonna ride with it. And we haven't won anyone since 2001. We've been favored to win the Stanley Cup the last 2 years, but we can't even get out of the second round. So I'm not gonna feel too bad for your 26 Stanley Cups. All right, next question: Mac Jones or Trevor Lawrence? Which quarterback would you rather have for your team over the next 5 years?
This is such a good one. That's such a good question. I think it's Trevor Lawrence. I think it's Trevor Lawrence. And I've been watching some I've watched every Jags game this season. I own a lot of Robinson. I put all the games up on the TV, and I'm focusing on the Jags every week. And I'm always just completely. I get in the worst mood watching this team. Like, part of it's Urban Meyer, the offensive line, the play calling. Trevor Lawrence is always scrambling for his life. I do believe in his upside. I think he could get better around the right environment. I mean, Urban Meyer let's be honest about what Urban Meyer, I mean, he's benched James Robinson in back-to-back weeks because he's fumbled the ball, and he's perfectly fine rolling out Carlos Hyde, who is not as great as a pass blocker and pass protection. And what does he do? He gets his quarterback rocked. He's so stubborn that he's willing to get his quarterback rocked against the Rams to roll out Carlos Hyde last week. I think Mac Jones is a good quarterback. I think he's accurate. I think he's smart. There's nothing against him. I think he's great. I think he's perfect for what the Pats want to do. Great defense, great offensive line. They run the football really well. That Jakob Johnson is such a beauty. He paves the ways for a lot of guys. But at the end of the day, like, I think I would rather have a quarterback. We'll see what Mac Jones is made of here when he gets into some more games where he has to throw the football a little bit more. So I don't know. Where do you stand on this?
Honestly, I just feel like it's
got a higher ceiling.
It's as simple as if you just swapped quarterbacks right now. Like, if you put Lawrence on the Patriots and you put Mac Jones on the Jaguars, would it be the exact same result?
It'd be a mess. for Mac Jones.
It would probably be the exact same result. So that's the thing, is that I don't want to put too much credit. Again, I think Mac Jones has played really well this year. I just don't want to give him too much credit for the Patriots' success, because wins are not a quarterback stat. Like that's a team thing. The defense is obviously playing lights out, and the running game as well. The offensive line, I think, is probably right now playing the best in the NFL. So that's what it is that when you have a strong offensive line, and a great running game, you're not going to get rocked very often. Instead, Trevor Lawrence is bottom 5 in the NFL in sacks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as far as like that's concerned, to him and Joe Burrow, essentially. So that's kind of where it is right now, is that for me, I would take Lawrence, but only like a slight edge, because again, I feel like Lawrence, much like Mac, but again, Lawrence, I feel like I'm just not sure if he has sometimes the decision-making like Mac. I feel like the Patriots have enabled him a little bit better, so that's more of a coaching thing. But I just think that Mac's decision-making from in certain spots, like especially on third down and some of the passes he's made, I'm just not 100% convinced that Lawrence could make those too, even though he looked fantastic in college and he looked fantastic in some games this year. I'm just not sold that some of those throws that Lawrence can make. So
it's all about the system, man. It really is. It's the system. I hear people saying last night, I saw some tweets like you could replace Mac Jones with absolutely anybody. Sure, you probably could have.
You could have for sure.
Yeah, last night you could have. Bill Belichick said, listen, we're not going to make any mistakes. We're going to bet on you to make mistakes. And what happened? The Bills made mistakes and New England won the game. But you're going to see Mac Jones get into situations where he has to throw the football a little bit more. But you're spot on. I mean, he's very accurate. His decision-making is off the charts. He's got a high IQ. He was setting college records last season playing at Bama. I mean, even I saw a tweet that surfaced a few years ago that he had tweeted, said that he had never even seen snow before. And he went into Buffalo last night, and he only threw the ball 3 times, but
like
you're looking like a natural, right? I mean, a 100% completion rate in the first half led them to a big victory. But yeah, I mean, it's all about the environment.
Next question. NHL shot totals. You're clearly a savant when it comes to these. I try to equate this to 3-point made props. I've got 2 or 3 guys that I always are like my go-to guys. Who are your go-to guys when it comes to shot totals, where immediately when the book comes out, like, and you're looking at your bets and you're looking at the matchups, you're like, okay, I got to see what this guy's shot total is. I got to see what this guy's shot total is. Are there 2 or 3 guys that you hang your hat on as those are the guys that are money makers?
Yeah, some of the books have caught on because some of them were like Sam Bennett was a guy for me towards the end of last season and this season. Now they've caught on. They've moved him up to 3.5, even though he's hit in 4 straight games. I like him. Sam Bennett's always one that I consider, but I'll say Max Pacioretty at 3.5. Even 3.5 seems like a lot, but he's what I like to call a puck hog. He's not afraid to shoot the puck. His shot attempts are through the roof, and same sort of deal with David Pastrnak, Pasta of the Bruins. Both of these guys love to shoot the puck. They're triggermans on their respective power plays, which is something that I like to take a look at as well. They're on the ice defending the lead when they're up by 1 goal, and they like to get those empty net goals as well. So those are 2 guys that I like. And man, it's such a tough question because there's a lot of other ones I like. Darnell Nurse, I'll throw out a defenseman here. Darnell Nurse, who's been plus money for basically the entire season, came back the other day off a broken hand and cleared 2.5 within the first period. So he's a guy that I always look at because I think a lot of people will overlook defensemen, but there's a handful that you could roll with. You got to think with these defensemen, they log a lot of ice time, more than the forwards. Like Darnell Nurse is playing 26.5 minutes a night. It's inside the top 5 among players in the NHL. He plays in all situations, PK, power play, and he, like I said, he just gets a lot of ice time. And, as much as that Oilers power play was operating at 50%, McDavid and Draisaitl are great, but they're pass-first guys. So I want to get involved with Darnell Nurse, and you get a couple power plays, and then you're good to go. It's George's Nurse, the Nurse Bennett special I see on the comment.
Yeah. So 2 questions left. This one's going to be super quick. It's just a yes or no. If someone offered you free season tickets for life to the Philadelphia Eagles, but as part of the deal, you got to wear a Cowboys jersey to each game, would you take those tickets?
Oh man, yeah, probably.
You wouldn't make it out of the stadium alive. I
tell you, I've been to the link with a Cowboys fan, and I was worried for his life. Yeah, I mean, I just have to tell people, like, listen, guys, I'd have to cheat and say I'm an Eagles fan. I'm rocking the shirt. I'm here.
Well, it doesn't mean that you couldn't still wear the Eagles hat. You know what I mean?
That's
so
true.
That way you could just be like, it's part of the deal.
A confused fan. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Final question, Meaney. and this isn't even a question. I just want you to tell me what it was like. Can you please explain to everyone the joy of being on the right side of history of Shohei Ohtani and cashing his MVP bet at 50-1? The floor is yours.
Yeah, man, that felt pretty good. Honestly, it just felt really good for some of the FTN subscribers that backed it, man. It was just nice to get them a 50-1 future like that. And people that know me, they know I like the Halos. It wasn't really a homer bet, honestly. It was just the fact that this is a two-way star, and I saw him since day one before the Tommy John surgery, and I thought, man, if this guy could really put this together, and I undersold him in the video that I tweeted out. I said if he could just give you 20 homers, maybe 75K, win a few games, just who does that? Nobody does that sort of thing. So it was certainly great to hit that 50-1 future. A phenomenal season from Shohei. I don't know if we see something like that again. I'm sure, I mean, he wants to do both, hit and pitch, but I think, honestly, he's probably going to have to pick a side, what he wants to do. It's super taxing. I mean, he was definitely fatigued towards the end of the season, and you want to keep him healthy. But yeah, man, that one felt good. It's nice. I've never hit a future like that before. I had a 33-1 Blues Cup before. That was my biggest one, but these long shot futures, especially from MVPs, you know this, they're super tough to hit, man, because especially in baseball, you just don't see somebody come out of left field and take that MVP, but the odds makers were sleeping on him. I guess they didn't really believe. And I will say this, it wasn't the first time that I bet Shohei Ohtani to win the MVP. I'd bet him one other time to win the MVP. So we did finally get it. But man, Jill, it was just so nice to see the people in the FTN Discord channels. Just thank you so much. One person reached out to me talking about like his wife had lost his job. It was just that little bit of money, even though he didn't put a whole lot on it, just was a game changer for him and his family. And to me, that's why we're here, man. And that's what pumped me up about everything.
That's incredible, man. And I'm glad you could share that with us because, again, that's the type of stuff that you're getting from FTN, like yourself or Josh Gross, Pat Mafichik, like all these people are, that's just baseball. You know what I mean? Like we're putting in these awesome valued futures. So you really need to subscribe if you want to be able to get access to those. So congratulations again. Now, before we go, Chris, can you tell the folks at home how they can find your work and what you've got going on? Yes, I know this, but I'd like you to share this.
You do know this. This Thursday, Mean Streets live on Game Plus Network. You will join me. We'll talk a little Thursday Night Football. Yeah, Mean Streets Monday to Friday, 12 Eastern from the Twitter account. You can check it on Game Plus Network. It's available on iTunes as well. We got some guys really helping out, and Tino running the show, and George with the graphics. They do a lot for me on that show. It's fantastic. Have a hockey show twice a week with Eric Young, Dango Betselli. That's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes we'll do the odd third show a week, but it has been a twice a week show, just breaking down everything in the NHL. Maddie Wood and myself on Mondays and Tuesdays. Sometimes we get together, the FTN Fabcast. The fantasy football waiver wire has kind of run its course, but we get together in baseball as well and talk. He's a great high stakes player, so I learn a lot from him as well. So lots of shows, FTN Bets, FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily. It's all happening, covering all the sports, and I just love this time of the year because they pretty much are all happening right now, man. So appreciate you having me on the show and allowing me to plug some of the stuff, and at Chris Meaney on the Twitter machine.
Absolutely, man. So again, that's all for me. I want to thank Chris Meaney, the hardest working man at FTN, to join me on the show today. Third show today. So the fact that he's able to make some time for me, really appreciate it. All of my writing content, if you want to check out Dog of the Day or any of my futures picks or touchdown and content, you can go over to ftnbets.com. And make sure to remind you that you can catch me every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern on BetsTV for Touchdown Town, where I give out my best touchdown scores of the week with National Football Post and Brendan Dawg. I want to thank you, everybody, for watching Dog Day Afternoon. I'm Gilles Gallant with BetsTV. Bon chance.